Hello, and welcome to this edition of ACFCS's interview series, Emerging Risks. This series takes a look at what's happening within the financial crime and compliance world and asks our expert members for their take on how to tackle these issues. For this session, we'll be tackling human trafficking and the aftermath of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Erin O'Loughlin, Senior Director of Training for ACFCS. We begin this episode with a focus on the most pertinent headlines dominating our world, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and what this means for our fincrime professionals working these issues. Over the past month, the world's collective attention has been focused on everything Russia. Within the financial crime compliance industry, the biggest analyses have been regarding the removal of Russia from SWIFT as well as sanctions. But on this episode, it's going to be even better. We bring on Timea Nagy, founder and CEO of Timea's Cause Inc. and TC Online Institute, to shed some light on these particular issues, particularly what's happening regarding human trafficking along the borders of Ukraine following the Russian invasion. Timea, thank you so much for being here.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing this very important topic up to the front.
Thank you. Let's get right into it. You've seen so much suffering in regards to human trafficking in your profession over the years. Have the trafficking victims increased since the beginning of the invasion?
Absolutely. So the best way to phrase it is the risk of individuals being trafficked right now has increased. So just to give you a couple of numbers, 90% of the victims in Europe are women and children, mainly women and young women that are being at risk to being a victim of human trafficking. Ukrainian women are on the top 3 list in Eastern Europe for becoming a victim of human trafficking. And now put that together with the current situation, it's only women and children that are crossing those borders. So absolutely, the fact that there's a lot of individuals that are crossing are at immediate risk right now, and they are extremely vulnerable to become a victim of human trafficking.
And these numbers you just stated, has this been within the last month that they've jumped up and increased, or has this always been the case?
Ukrainian women and Eastern European women has always been in a top 5 in Eastern Europe, but the Ukrainian women specifically were in the top. And so those numbers didn't change, but what changed right now is they were already a very at-risk population. And guess who's crossing the borders right now? Men are not allowed to leave the country. So it's either just elderly men or women and children, and they're traveling alone. And unfortunately, the traffickers in Eastern Europe and from the Western culture, they are showing up around the borders to trying to recruit them or pretend that they are offering safe traveling plans.
Why have they always been so vulnerable? What is that area of the world? Why is it like that?
Yeah, it's poverty. It's a mindset. It's a broken promises from politicians over and over and over, generations to generations. If you travel to that region, coming from the Western region, it's very immediate. You can see it right away that poverty is very relevant. So I'll give you a quick idea. I grew up, and this is still pretty normal. People are growing up in a very small place, and 5, 6, 7 people live in a small place. It's almost impossible for the next generation or young kids to get out of home or to dream about having a house on their own. So those are the things that you see on television that are sold to you, these American dreams. To us, it's like nearly impossible unless you leave the country, go somewhere else, make the money there, and send it back home. So that's why.
And on a personal note, where exactly are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yes, I'm actually from Budapest, Hungary, and we are only 3 hours away from the border that's bordered with Ukraine. So Hungary actually shares 134 kilometers borderline with the Ukrainian country.
So this is even much more personal and affects you on a bigger level than a lot of other people in this industry, correct?
Well, it really affects me for several reasons. One is Hungary is a country where everybody wants to get through to get to Ukraine. But we are also getting a lot of business from Russia. So our gas and our natural gas is actually from Russia. So But the NATO is pressuring us to get involved. The European Union is pressuring us to get involved. We're supposed to give our highways over to NATO to transfer weapons. But our prime minister is like very, very concerned. So far, Hungary is only allowing the refugees coming into Hungary, and we are doing the best we can to give humanitarian aid. And the other thing is, it's a long history, but there's a big piece of Ukraine on the Hungarian border that is actually used to be a Hungarian country. And back in a day, politicians made a decision after the Second World War that everybody takes a piece of everybody. So Hungary, while it was this big, now it's this little. And a lot of people in Ukraine who live there are Hungarian Ukrainians speaking both languages. So those are not just Ukrainian refugees to us, those are Hungarian Ukrainian refugees, our people.
Thank you for that explanation, because again, I always harp on this as well. It's always so good to know the culture and the historical aspect of whatever geographical area you're looking at. For even in financial transactions, you need to understand that why these Hungarian transactions are making their way to Ukraine and vice versa. Oh, they have family there. That's your KYC. You know, oh, this is very common for this particular account. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's go back to the actual invasion and you mentioned free travel. Is this how they're getting these victims into the human trafficking complex? How are they doing this?
Yeah, so right now what you have to understand is that the refugees come to the borders, and in every country, Hungary, Poland, and all the bordering countries, they have what's called the welcome stations. And in that welcome station, they offer them a 24/7 emergency overnight stay. And that's where they get assessed, they get medication, they get food, they get whatever they need. And then they have a crisis team that they meet, and a crisis team will assess where they want to go from here. Some people just want to stay here until the war is over, and some people just want to go as far as they can, right? So some people have families in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and they just want to keep on going, but they have very little with them. They may have animals, they may get sick, so they just need to catch their breath. So once they catch their breath, then these welcome centers offer them free traveling up to the main cities, main arteries of the cities with the train. However, you might be exhausted, you might be tired, you might just had enough of seeing the crowd, you might be experiencing post-traumatic. So if somebody offers you a ride, a private ride in a vehicle, it's not that you're not listening to what our authorities saying or that you are not smart enough, it's you're just exhausted and there's so much praise. And if some friendly face shows up and offered you this, then of course you're going to get into that vehicle. That's one. Another thing is happening right now, not just in Hungary, but all the neighboring countries. Companies coming down with company vehicles and offering jobs right now for the next few months. The Hungarian government is promoting that, they're supporting it, and all the other countries too. Well, while we are trying to hand out flyers to everybody who crosses the border to say, hey, this is a safe transportation, this might not be, you just can't, it's just really hard to figure it out who has good intentions and who isn't. And right now, I believe that there is no specific list that these people are being screened, that this is a safe company vehicle to get in or not. But I do believe there's a flyer going around to give them. However, this is why it's really, they are very vulnerable and they just want to get to the next destination. And unfortunately, the traffickers are lining up around the borders.
What would be your best advice for people who want to volunteer anything, whether your time or your money or anything like that? Not just our fincrime industry folks, but anyone out there who's listening. What is your best advice for volunteering, for helping?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So things are getting really organized now. So there's very few organizations that are basically the head of deploying all the other organizations, and basically very centralized services and mobilized services that are happening right now. So my suggestion would be, depending on which country you want to send your support, look up that country and look up who is that organization that's on the top of the organizing these service providing things. Sorry, I didn't do a very good job on explaining that, but you just want to find those top organizations who are in charge and overseeing the entire operations. And it's about 1 or 2 organizations, UN, Red Cross, and all that. And I would send money there, but if they could, and also contact them. And I get a lot of people contacting me and say they want to go overseas. Well, the only thing I can suggest is Hungary, because I know where everything is at. And currently there are at least 30 organizations that are looking for, volunteer drivers, volunteer cooks, volunteer, security overnight in these overnight places. So that's what I would suggest. I would go on the country, I would look at those websites, and I would contact them. They're really good at responding within 48 hours.
Great, thank you for that. There's a lot of questions that come in about what can I do? Because being so far away, you feel a little helpless. I'd like to go back to the actual operations and logistics of how we, number one, how do we know that this is the way that the operation is going, meaning they're giving free rides? Have we been able to get that intelligence from victims that have been rescued? And if so, how many victims have been rescued so far?
Yeah, great question. So there has been 2 cases that has been actually confirmed, but we know that there's more. But 2 cases have been confirmed where they got the ride, they were taken away, and they were able to escape and go to authorities. So this is what I would like to flag to everybody. It's not a matter of if it's happening and how it's happening. We know how it's happening and we know it's happening. It's just we're going to get the data a little bit delayed because they are just literally crossing the border. So there are people who unfortunately crossed 3 weeks ago, got trafficked, and right now being trafficked. Right now they are somewhere in the middle of nowhere where they don't speak the language, they don't know how to get out, and they are extremely vulnerable. So right now, unfortunately, we're not going to have as much data. We just know the how, we just know that it's going to, and then slowly we're going to start to see those transaction related evidence as well. But right now, all we know for sure that there has been 2 cases confirmed, but we know that there's more, and the data will come soon.
This is the tip of the iceberg. We've just started because of this invasion. It's only been 4 or 5 weeks. Or can I give your email address to our viewers in case anyone does find any kind of intelligence, they want to pass it to you? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. And I just want to say one more thing is that you're not just going to see the evidence of trafficking just in the border countries. They're actually going to be taken away from it because, to be honest, Hungary and all those countries, they are not a massive money makers, revenue makers when it comes to either sex trafficking or forced labor. So if some victims will be trafficked, the older victims probably going to be trafficked and going to stay in the countries and forced labor, and there's going to be a lot of cash transactions. So not sure if that's going to be able to be detected. But what happens is you're going to start seeing, and you're already seeing, those sexual advertising ads going up in the Western countries like Austria, Germany, England, Belgium, Switzerland. That's where the victim's going to end up, and that's where they're going to be sold. So again, just a matter of weeks. And we already see the online ads increasing, Ukrainian girls sold, Ukrainian, and then you're slowly going to see the money transactions behind it as well.
Where are you seeing these online ads?
Every country have their own version of what you used to have Backpage. Every single country has their own. So, but on transactions, you're going to see the ads being paid for.
This is a really good tip for our OSINT investigators. Any investigator out there that specializes in open source intelligence, be on the lookout. It's not something that we're advocating, telling our financial institutions, go on porn sites, please. We're not doing that. If you happen to have a vendor that does scrapes like this, that would be the best situation you could hope for. But if you happen to run across anything like Backpage or whatever else that's out there, then you will probably see an uptick in Ukrainian women on these, and it's more than likely not something that they're doing voluntarily. Is that what you're saying?
Correct, 100% correct.
Such a good tip for our OSINT investigators. I want to talk more about this. I want to have 2 days worth of this, which we can do sometime. This is a smaller video, unfortunately. Lastly, let's give our viewers something to take back to their desks. You've got so much really good intelligence that we can work with right now. What are the red flags? You just talked about them, about what a financial compliance investigator can look for within this region and maybe hopefully potentially find human trafficking. What can they look for?
Yeah, so transportation related costs, housing related costs that would potentially go up. So lots of Airbnb rentals, lots of hotel rentals, because if you start trafficking people, you still have to put them somewhere. And food costs. Again, think about it. If you take 2, 6, 8 women with you, they still need to eat. They're going to feed them probably once a day, but they still need to feed them. So yeah, transportation, food, and accommodations, those are the costs that you would usually go up, and advertising costs, like I said earlier.
Fantastic. This can help our data scientists that are inside, or our data experts, let's put it that way, they're data experts that are inside our financial institutions, both in Europe, both in Eastern, Western Europe, and Africa, anywhere, global financial institutions. Tweak your alerts to be able to look for things like this. Timea can help you. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for being a part of our Emerging Risks interviewee in the new content series, Timea.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing this very, very important topic to the forefront.
Excellent. We hate to have to do it, but we have to do it, right? Make sure that we get the bad guys. To all of you viewing, please check out the ACFCS website for additional interviews. This series is not going away just with the Russian invasion in Ukraine. We're going to keep it going. We're going to talk about other timely topics we need to explore within the interview series. So let us know what you'd like to hear. Until then, keep up the good fight, everyone. Thank you.